Postseason basketball is almost here, and yet we still have absolutely no idea what to make of the Kentucky Wildcats.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on tonight's episode of the show, we are going to be recapping Kentucky basketball's 86-78 loss to the Georgia Bulldogs at home. A bit of a confusing one from Mark Pope with the substitutions, with the desire to play zone in the most crucial moments. Kentucky fumbling the ball away at the most inopportune times, not playing defense on the perimeter, playing like they were running in sand. It's just, any sort of goodwill that this team had created for itself after winning 8 out of their last 9 has now gone away after losing on the road to Florida and now losing at home to a middling Georgia squad. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. We put that same drive into every detail. Kentucky sure doesn't. Wins to find the moment, putting in the work that defines you, though. Stay tuned for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. I want to remind you guys that we are free and available on all platforms. If you are watching on YouTube live here amongst the many Florida fans that are destined to be in this post-game live because it's the most sensitive fan base in the SEC, would appreciate it if you all subscribe to the show, like the video, because clearly there are multiple fan bases interested in joining the Locked On Kentucky crew. 86-78 is the final score. Cats drop to 17-9, 8-5 in SEC play. Look, we've talked about it. The question regarding Mark Pope's squad was they could not get away with it forever, right? They could not find themselves down by these large deficits and find their way to claw back every single time. And we've now seen them officially regress to the mean. 2 games where they got down by double digits, cut the lead all the way down to 3 or 4 points in both of these contests against Florida and Georgia, and yet they are not able to close as they have been miraculously for about a month now. Except in this one, it didn't necessarily feel like the players' fault specifically. It was, I think, a combination of an embarrassing lack of effort for a large portion of this game in terms of defensive intensity and just energy. And then at the same time, I thought that was compounded by some really, I think, confusing decisions by Mark Pope. This Georgia team came into this game 291st in three-point shooting. They are now 266th. Why? Because they went 14 of 31 for 45.2%. In the second half, they were 8 of 14 for 57.1% from beyond the arc. Kentucky did not seem to care to close out on Georgia's shooters, and this was compounded when Mark Pope decided, in some really crucial moments down the stretch, to play zone. Why on earth would you want to play zone against a Georgia team that is shooting the ever-loving life out of the basketball? It was not just one player. 4 different Bulldogs hit at least 2 threes. Wilkinson hit 3. Catchings hit 2. Millender hit 4. Stagg hit 1. Kane hit 3. Just a mind-boggling decision. And that was also compounded throughout the course of the game. Kentucky's inability to be consistent on defense. It was also compounded by the substitutions that Mark Pope continued to make. Kentucky would go on a run, they'd sub out 2 or 3 players, and the run would die. They would go on a run, they would sub out 2 or 3 players immediately, and the run would die. Georgia finishes with a kill shot in this game. Kentucky could have had 2 or 3 if they had just stuck with what was working on the court, and yet they didn't, and they lose this game by 8 points. An embarrassing performance in terms of effort, and not on the offensive end, on the defensive end. Kentucky looked like they were running in sand They looked sluggish. This was a 9 p.m. tip, and it looked like it was a 9 a.m. tip for the Wildcats. They did not seem to care. And I don't know what it's going to take. Now, as the season winds down, I don't know what it is going to take for this team to play with effort consistently. They did it for 9 straight games in the second half, basically, where they found a way to come back miraculously and close some close games out. And now they've regressed to the mean, I guess. But again, it's an effort issue, I think. It's an effort problem. And now you roll into Auburn on Saturday against a team that is desperate to make the NCAA tournament, with some issues going on with Keyshawn Hall, their leading scorer, with some disciplinary issues. So he may or may not play. He's going to play. Trust me, they're going to get him going for Kentucky. And now you look up and it's like, okay, you've now lost 2. You're 8-5. There goes any chance at winning the SEC regular season title. It's going to make it even more difficult to make it through the SEC tournament bracket, because now you're definitely not guaranteed, nowhere close to guaranteed to get a double bye at this point, because you would have to really start to blitzkrieg these final 5 games. You'd have to go 4-1 or better. And you've got 3 different away games coming up. And you've got 2 home games against teams you've already lost to. One of them by 25. So again, any sort of goodwill that this team might have harbored for this fan base is gone. It's just gone. This team, cannot be predicted on a game-by-game basis. It just can't. There's nothing we can do about that. We just have to sit here and hope that they actually go out there and try. As I have continued to say, and I said it on Twitter, and I'll say it again today, they are getting paid too much money not to care. And I think they do care. Let me rephrase. They're getting paid too much money not to try consistently. We're not seeing enough effort from these millionaires on the floor, from these kids that are getting paid a lot of money. And for anybody, if we turn around and win on Auburn on Saturday, for anybody that wants to say, stay on that side, stay on that, you can't stay on a side. You can't decide whether or not you want to actually play hard. You can't decide whether or not you want to actually give the effort warranted to win a game. So you pick a side. It is beyond me that the fan base can suckle into that sort of thinking when the team can't even decide who they want to be. So you pick a side first, and then I will follow after that, because it's clear you don't care consistently. I can't pick a side. 86-78. We'll continue breaking this one down here in just a moment. Before we do it, though, today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. This is Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who show there's more to the score than what's on the screen, I'm actually not even going to talk about anything to do with Kentucky today. How about Mike White, who is still kicking it in the SEC, going on the road, beating Kentucky in Rupp? How about the effort from him and his squad to be able to come in here, maintain their composure, and shoot the ever-loving lights out of the ball? Incredible stuff. The detail, the focus, the attention. They actually came in here and played like they wanted to win. It's the extra work off the court. It's dialing in on every detail, giving it that extra fire, that grit, and I never quit. Georgia didn't give that. They got up in this game, and they never looked back. Mazda puts that exact same passion that teams like Georgia have into every single model that they make, because highlights might make the reel, sure, but actually what it took to get there makes it count. It made it count for the Bulldogs today. There's more to a Mazda, because there's more to you. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. If you've ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person, FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. You use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip or 2. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is a perfect time to lock in. And not only can your pick cash, but it could also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Really appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. 86-78 is the final score. It is late in the night. Cats lose in embarrassing fashion to the Georgia Bulldogs, who clearly wanted the game more from start to finish. I think Kentucky's lack of physicality reared a very ugly head in this game. Brandon Garrison and Malachi Marino don't have the touch or the physicality to keep up with the front court like Georgia's that's specifically anchored by former Kentucky signee Somto Cyril, who in this game cashed in, I believe, 14 huge points, just insane strength and control off of a couple of these offensive rebounds to not just get the board, but be able to flip it in after getting fouled. A circus shot, some might call it. I think it's just an impressive show of strength. In this game, Georgia held Kentucky's bigs to a combined 2 of 7 shooting and a total of 8 points. Malachi was 2 of 4. Garrison was 0 of 3. Garrison was just -1 in this game, apparently, but there were so many different moments where it's just like the beginning of the season where I look up and I see Garrison is the guilty culprit of an immediate empty possession or an immediate defensive breakdown. It is just mind-boggling to me how often he is on the receiving end of what feels like the bad part of a play. And I'm not saying he's unplayable. There are games where he plays hard, where he locks in. Tonight was not one of them. In 13 minutes, I thought he was instrumental in losing some key possessions. I also thought that, to go back to the rotations, there was no world where Jasper Johnson should have played 15 minutes in this game. He shot 2 of 8. If the only thing Johnson is providing is scoring and just praying that he holds on to the ball whenever he's got it, you can't have a 2 of 8 shooting night, a 1 of 5 from 3 night, and leave him out there for 15 minutes. He was -16. That was second worst on the team. I thought that his minutes defensively were huge in blowing this for Kentucky. Again, just Pope's decisions with the rotations just compounded some lack of effort on the defensive end. Jasper was not just personnel-wise. He's just not the guy you want to have out there. And I understand Aberdeen was hurt at one point. Like, it looked like something was wrong with his shoulder. But even then, you find a different rotation. A different player to put in the rotation, because anybody can go 2 of 8, 1 of 5 from deep on this team. I firmly believe that. Lack of touch, again, around the rim is really starting to kill Kentucky. Dawe finished with 28 points, 11 of 18, 3 of 5 from deep, but there were 4 turnovers, 3 of them costly, I think, just straight up off of his leg out of bounds. You got the 28, but you got the good and the bad. And again, just a lack of touch from players like him on this team. Jasper, Marino, Garrison, Diabate. This team does not have the shot making inside the arc to become an efficient offense in the NCAA tournament. At least they don't right now. Maybe a matchup will give them a specific game where they can shoot really well on pull-up mid-range jumpers or have nice touch around the basket. But against a team like Georgia, who prides itself on being uber physical, it's gonna kill you. And I do want to go ahead and get out of this in front of this real quick. For anybody that wants to say anything about the officiating, look, I thought it was bad in this one. They missed just the most blatantly obvious goaltend at the beginning of the game. These refs suck. We all know that. The officiating crews in college basketball are just inconsistent and bad. People like Pat Adams just miss stuff. It's part of it. Maybe you shouldn't have been in the position to lose this game like this if you had actually played some perimeter defense. That's just my take on this one. But I will say the reason that Georgia beat Kentucky in Athens last season was because the officiating crew allowed Georgia to be super handsy, super physical with the bigs especially. It's a foul then. It's a foul now. I'll also tell you there were probably 3 different possessions where Kentucky either got a stop or almost got a stop where they just fouled the ever-loving snot out of Georgia, 3 different ball handlers, and nothing was called. And Mike White and Blue Cane and Wilkins, whoever it was, there should have been a technical assessed there because of what was said. They were cussing at the official, calling him a blinking idiot. There should have been a tech, but still, on both sides, it was bad. Pat Adams and this crew were not good. They were just not good. But it's the same thing I keep saying. Call it by the book. Don't call it by the context of the game and the vibes. It is, you are paid to call the game by the book, and that goes for both sides of the ball. Listen, really listen in there for any Georgia or Florida fans who are obviously in the live chat, because they are sensitive people on Twitter. My gosh, just listen. I'm saying for both sides. If it goes for Kentucky, if it goes against Kentucky, call the game by the book. Call it fairly. It wasn't the reason Kentucky lost. You can't give up 14 threes to one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the conference and then play zone whenever the game is on the line. It doesn't. You don't do that at any level. At high school level, at the low D1 level, at the SEC, in the Big Ten, in the ACC. You don't do that, and yet Kentucky does. Combination of coaching and a combination of lack of effort. Georgia leads the country in transition points. Kentucky's actually second, if I'm not mistaken. Both these teams get out and run well, but it was so obvious that Georgia was getting back more often. And I don't care that Kentucky had 5 more fast break points. Forget what the box score says. Georgia was fighting harder, especially when it came to what was happening in transition and speeding the half court up. Kentucky was a step too slow. Just a step too slow again. This is 2 games in a row now where Kentucky looks half asleep. And I also want to say this about the crowd. You know, the individual fans can say and act any way that they want to. I think any other fan is free to criticize or comment on it mostly any way that they can. So you can act how you want to, and I can say what I want about it. Generally speaking, I think the environment in Rupp in games like that, it is just embarrassing. It's really bad that it feels like the majority of this cathedral of college basketball is sleeping in the pews. They're not watching what's actually going on. They're not celebrating what's going on. They're not cheering. They're not using their voice. And you can attribute it to whatever you want. You can attribute it to, oh, most of the lower bowl's made up of old people. Oh, they don't care because the team's getting beat. You attribute it to whatever you want to. The fact of the matter is the crowd should be more into it. The crowd has to be more of a factor here. And honestly, there were moments in this game where Kentucky could have used it, and it just wasn't there. It just wasn't there. And it was there late for a couple of possessions, right? But you have to, in games like this where the other team shows up and you want to give your team some mental fuel, you gotta be up and you gotta be supporting them. So I wish the crowd acted more like fans instead of just spectators. I wish they would act like they cared. I wish this team would act like they cared more. And this is not an indictment on you. This is not, if you were at that game and you're up cheering, it's not an indictment on you. It's a comment on what is supposed to be one of the better environments in the sport. Consistently in games like this, it should matter. It should be an impact, and it wasn't today. When this team is down, the fan base should be there to sort of help rally, and it was dead silent in that building. Dead silent. And you can also say, well, does this team deserve it because of their lack of effort? Again, that's a whole nother conversation. I would say that that in games like this, you got to try, especially considering how they've been playing in the second half of the year. You got to try. So you've been asked to sit down at Rupp before, says Gary Allen. That needs to change. That needs to change. Because let me tell you what's going to happen on Saturday. Auburn plays in what is effectively a larger high school gym. It's very small. It's about 8,000 people. I'll be there. I'll be there to witness this Kentucky game. They never stop. It doesn't matter how good they are. It doesn't matter how bad they are. Auburn is going to make that the loudest environment possible against a Kentucky team that would like a big quad one win to kind of offset whatever the hell just happened today. That's an Auburn team that needs one desperately. The fans know it, the team knows it, and they're going to be up there to support, even when they get down by 10 or 15, 10 to 12 points. If it happens, if Kentucky miraculously gets up by that much, they're going to get up and support their team. And they're 14-11. We got to get up and support ours more consistently. An embarrassing one inside Rupp. An embarrassing one inside Rupp Arena. We'll wrap up the show, get to the live chat, listen to what you guys have to say on this one. You'll be sounding off. I know you have been this entire time. Before we do it, though, tell you guys about our friends over Indeed. Workplace chaos. Deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill just sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. Skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute or so that I've been talking to you about this, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend time, less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching, more time actually interviewing candidates. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help you get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just head to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. If you need to hire, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. 86-78 is the final score. 17-9, 8-5 are the Cats now. Lost 2 in a row. Heading to Auburn on Saturday, a game that they are projected to lose. Could be 3 in a row. Could be 6 out of their last, I believe, 8 to close out the season. It could get ugly. It could get ugly. This could be an 18-13 type of year. You lose in the first round of the SEC tournament, 18-14. You probably don't make the NCAA tournament at that point. We all go home and say, well, this was a big old stinker from Mark Pope and company, even with the injuries and such. As much as I like Pope and some of the stuff that he does, some of the things that he will do with the rotations, does not make sense to me consistently. And I don't know where his head is at with that. Knowing that Johnson and Noah are defensive liabilities. I don't know. Royce Pettis says someone on the team is gambling on games at Kentucky. Someone is betting on games. It's pretty obvious this isn't Kentucky basketball. I don't think that's the case at all. And not even close. There are teams in other conferences people would in here have never even heard of that would embarrass this team. Sandman says, I don't care what anyone says. Cal would have had us in a better position the year he left. He had a hell of a class coming in. I would argue that he didn't. Actually, I would argue that it would have probably been a similarly rough year. This year, we have no idea, though, because I think the roster would have looked completely different. Not being able to land top recruits make no sense to me, especially when you're a blue blood. Hey, again, we've talked about it. It's not over yet. We're not out of the picture for Stokes. After all of that stuff that came out about him over the last couple of days, for that one Kansas insider that effectively said, yeah, Kansas leads, but like we have no idea what's basically what I took from it is that nobody really knows what's going to happen. As we have continued to say. Transfer portal is where it's at. I hope. The classic, your team is terrible, but since we beat you, everyone now thinks we are for real and could win a title. Pope needs to get a GM. Based on his comments, doesn't sound like he wants that. Why is gambling crazy? The NBA big ordeal earlier this year, smaller colleges busted. My assumption is that Kentucky would have been listed among those colleges earlier this year if there had actually been any sort of legitimate gambling going on. I also would find it extremely hard to believe given the amount of money that this roster is reportedly making. I just don't see that happening. I could see it happening at the NBA level. I can't see it happening at the college level. I think that it would be a little bit more difficult to accomplish. Pope deserves a break. We need a healthy point guard. That is, again, something that will continue to get lost in the end of this season. People will dog on this team. I think rightfully so at times. And I'm here to criticize the effort. I'm here to criticize the weird coaching decisions. But there are some things that you can't necessarily help. One of them being Kentucky just doesn't have a point guard. They don't have their starting small forward, and they don't have their lottery pick center. They don't have any of those guys. Two of which I think would at least make an impact. So just keep that in mind if this dough goes really sour to close out. Injuries played a factor. Effort and consistency also does as well. I mean, this is still a rotation that can theoretically go 8-9 deep, right? Captain Crash says, I wonder if rotating transfer players in and out of rosters is leading to our home court advantage, leading to losing our home court advantage. I don't know what that would have to do with the home court advantage, because I feel like fans should cheer regardless. I don't see how that, like, it would change a fan's perspective, because I don't think I would care that much. Honestly, I don't think it's really matter for Kentucky fans at all if you're saying like roster turnover is a problem, because that's what we thrived on for the last 15 years. It was freshmen that were here for 32 games or here for 40 games at most and gone. Can you make us look forward to something? What's positive? Well, baseball lost today to Morehead State, so that's awesome. Will Stein was in the house. He got to witness this. Hopefully he took some notes and understands that Kentucky, on the football side of things, has to be a little cleaner. I think that I was looking at something yesterday or the day before, just looking at Kentucky's roster construction. As far as football goes, I think they've got a really high floor. Does that translate to wins? I don't know, but I think Kentucky's got a high floor in year one under Stein, which is exciting. The fact that Pope started this year without two legitimate point guards of the roster tells me all I need to know about his ability to coach. Well, considering one of those guys dislocated his shoulder in practice and the other one left because he said he felt like he was being recruited over. I don't know what that says about his ability to coach, considering they're 17-9 right now and they won 8 out of their last 9 without a point guard. So I think that you can look at it from both ways for sure. I don't think this is an objective. He sucks. It's not a dunk on him for sure. If Kentucky focuses more on defense rather than trying to score, they would lose. They would win more. I don't know. I don't know about that one. Where was our defense this game? I don't know, man. Considering this was it was obvious, at least in the first half, that hey, Georgia was hitting. They still hit 6 threes in the first half. It was one of those where it's like, okay, can we play a little bit better defense in the second? I don't know. Now we have to beat Vandy, says Great Kentucky. And that's another good way to look at it. It's like, hey, at least we still have opportunities. We still got 5 games left. 4 of them huge ones. Auburn, Vandy, A&M, Florida. You're tired of hearing about Cal? Me too, man. Considering any sort of definitive statement that any person could make about what Cal's doing right now is just wrong. Because we don't know. Unless you're a time traveler from a different universe, you can't tell me what Cal would have done with this team. You can't. You can speculate, but any sort of definitive comment is just objectively incorrect. There's no way to prove it. And so, yeah, I am tired of hearing about him too. Tired of hearing about it. Kentucky also dropped, by the way, from 27th to 31st in KenPom. Their defense dropped almost 10 spots after this one, which is shocking. Somebody in the chat says, I felt so good about about this one going into it. Battled in Florida and Gainesville. Really thought we were going to whoop Georgia. I thought the team, with the way that they again, execution wasn't there. Effort was against Florida. And then effort wasn't here tonight on defense, man. KY Joey says, I saw this loss coming. Georgia was desperate. We're still in a good position. Good night, BBN. I guess if you want to make something positive out of it, we'll take this back to Cal briefly. Something that he said after Kentucky beat the Hogs at Arkansas on January 31st. He said that they came in playing more desperate. They wanted it more. Georgia wanted this one more tonight. Kentucky's got to go into Auburn on Saturday and prove that they are more desperate. They got to prove that they want it more. Tired of hearing about Cal when y'all are the ones constantly bringing him up. Hey, it's y'all. It's Chad. Tired of hearing it. I'm surprised, and I know I've already said this twice. They're the Hogs fans. Cool. I'm surprised that Florida fans aren't in here, considering just how active they've been on Twitter. I actually want to close this out by saying a couple of different things about this team and about rankings, just in general. Because I tweeted this out, and this got a lot of traction, specifically from opposing fan bases that I don't think quite understood what I was trying to say, and that's okay. I can walk you through it. I tweeted out saying that I don't care what the AP poll has to say. The pushback on that was, well, you care enough to tweet about it. So let me clarify, considering the examples and the thought that I gave in my tweet. It wasn't, unfortunately, enough for a lot of people on Twitter. It's not about I don't care about what it means. In my mind, it's not legitimate. I don't care. It's not about conversing about it and criticizing it does not equate to caring about it. Like, I don't care that Kentucky's ranked or unranked. I don't care that they are number 1 or number 25. The AP poll as a metric, I think, is illegitimate and should not be utilized, or it should not have as much weight put on it as it does. I think it's irrelevant. Every phase of the year, it would not matter if Kentucky was ranked first right now. It would not matter if they weren't ranked at all. It does not matter to me. Take the Wildcats completely out of the equation. In my opinion, the AP poll does not matter. I don't care if Kentucky's ranked or not. I said that before they became ranked. I said that when they were ranked, and I said it again after they were unranked. I have been consistent in my stance. This has been a huge issue in this sport, and it was a massive sticking point in about week 3 of the college football season last year when some USC beat reporter had some mind-boggling decision to be made about Florida and USF in the poll after the Gators lost to the Bulls. It is a bad thing because on average, the people that watch this sport and vote don't watch enough of the sport to vote on the AP poll. When it comes to computer models, I think that they are significantly more accurate as metric systems and ratings systems, not rankings, ratings systems. And so I fall back on that. However, I will say, again, for this season, it has been crazy to me just how much Kentucky has bucked expectations, and they did it again tonight in a bad way. Forget what the AP poll says. Forget what KenPom says. We've got 5 games left here, guys. 5 games. Kentucky is projected to go 1-4, according to KenPom. Who cares? Just let it ride. Who cares what a human thinks? Who cares what a computer model thinks? Let's just hope that this team gives effort and fights, unlike they did tonight, and shows us something on Saturday and gets a win. Would love to see that happen. Somebody in chat says, I see so many Kentucky fans dunking on the Cats, but no one acknowledges that this team has done what they've done all season with a severely limited roster. I think it is twofold. Limited roster, poorly constructed roster as well. I think that both of those are 100% true. So as somebody points out, nothing worse than missed free throws. Kentucky wins or loses this game by 8. 8 missed free throws in this one. And then a goaltend. You know, it's Peanut Butter Posse says, what was all that Jasper Johnson runabout? Did they think they were playing Georgia Southern? Again, I don't know what the coaching decisions in this one were weird. Because over the Kentucky's run, I feel like the coaching decisions have been fine to good. And then it's just like we play 4 minutes, 3 minutes, and we're subbing a ton of players out. So, as Jared Lynch says, Pope gets his fair share of the blame on this one. I agree. So, appreciate you guys tuning in. Super late. Y'all get some rest. That's going to do it for tonight's episode of the show. Follow the show on Twitter at LockedOnUK. Follow me on Twitter at LanceDahl_. Follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of the show. Hope you guys have a great rest of your evening, and God bless. And at the end of the day, don't get that worked up over it, especially when it comes to things on social media.